to Homecast.
Alright, welcome to the Homecast. Hi everyone. So today, someone volunteering for my Homecast based on the opening call. So welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Sara. I'm a fine art student at Falmouth University. That's also how I know you, obviously. And I don't know. Just thank you for having me. And
thank you so much for actually joining the Homecast. It's amazing because everyone's story are very special to me. And they go through me to different journey through my, healing process, basically. So really thanks for that, you coming, and I really appreciate that. So what objects you've been bringing to us, and tell me the story, please.
Yeah, so when you asked me about the objects, I prepared two because I'm quite an undecisive person. So I think that's why I decided to go with two. The first one I've sent you a photo of was a sort of pile of jewelry, and it's just mostly gold jewelry. I'm a gold jewelry sort of person. I don't really like silver, so most of my jewelry collection is gold. I have also a very limited collection of jewelry, so it just sort of there's a couple of rings there, two necklaces, and just sort of a really, really small pile. But every single one of them sort of marks a milestone in my life, I feel like, or is sort of, I don't know, has some story behind it in a way. Usually they were gifts. I usually don't buy jewelry for myself. It's sort of from other people or... So that's sort of the first object I chose, and then another one is a teddy bear that sort of is related to a very specific time in my life, which is sort of more mental health story, I guess, so, and more specific one. So I thought that could be also a good topic to talk about during your podcast.
Amazing, thank you. Can you describe a little bit more about the teddy bear? What is the teddy bear like? Just the colors? Or...
of course. So it's sort of it's quite big. I would say, it's not human size, but half a human size. It's beige, it's fluffy, but not super soft. It has a little ribbon around his neck, or hair. The teddy bear doesn't have a name and doesn't have a gender, really. That was sort of undecided from my point. He's just the bear. I sort of refer to him as just the bear. But
it's like a cuddle friend.
Exactly. But I don't have really personal relationship with it in a way that some people name the teddy bears. It's not the sort of thing I do. It's just sort of
something you want to cuddle with it and hug it.
And it does have a special meaning to me, but I don't really.
I get it. I mean, thank you so much. So should we start with your jewelry, because it sounds interesting that you said most of your jewelry are based on people bought it for you or gave it to you as a gift.
Yeah.
And apparently they attach with little things and it have a story in it. Would you mind to tell me the story why you're choosing that object?
Yeah, definitely. So I will just try to sort of go through different jewelry pieces.
Oh,
maybe,
yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So first one I think I should probably start with is I have earrings that are those sort of tiny little circles. They're really small. They're hardly visible when they're on your ears, really, because they're just so tiny. And those are my first earrings ever. I got them from my mom, I believe. I can't even remember because they were sort of bought for me when I was born, in a way that family found out that it's gonna be a girl, so they put they bought the earrings and they just sort of put it on the side for me. And yeah, so I remember like being probably in a kindergarten, and my friend had the ears pierced like for the first time, and I got like really like jealous almost, and like I went home back to my mum and I told her I really want earrings as well. And she took me, and I had my ear pierced, and those were like the first earrings that she gave me, sort of like, and I think like after that, like for a very very long time, like 4 years, like until I was like 18, maybe even or 19, those were like the only earrings I was wearing, and I would never take them off. They almost like I wouldn't really call myself. Well, I am quite spiritual, maybe in a way, but I'm not really superstitious. But with those earrings, like there was something that sort of, like I just couldn't take them off in a way. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
I were like, I was so attached to them, which is like quite interesting how you can get so attached to an object. And I even like remember I was like taking swimming classes, and at some point, someone noticed that I was wearing earrings, and they were like, you can't wear earrings during the swimming class. And I was like, but there's no way I'm taking them off. Like, I'm not gonna take them off. And I got so stressed. It was just, and I remember like my mom writing a paper for my like teachers, and like because it was like the swimming class was sort of happening through school, so.
Yeah.
That like they let me keep the earrings during like this swimming class. So yeah, it was sort of like so I really remember it, which is crazy because it was so long time ago. But yeah, just this sort of like anxiety around being like apart from the object, I think is quite interesting that it sort of became so like symbolic and almost meant like sort of safety and like that someone's looking after me. And
Oh, this is so cute.
yeah.
It's like something that is so attached to you. I find it quite interesting though, because like most like little one, they normally like, I find it like, oh, I want a teddy bear as like when I first born, or like the parents will be like, oh, I will put you a teddy bear for like a first gift, and your parents should decide to bought you like a jewelry, like a earrings, because it's to attach you, because they know that, oh, you'll be a girl, and then this is the reason why they want to put you earrings. That's actually really like special. And also I can definitely tell how like important to you that you said like, oh, I can't even like remove it for a swimming class, and it was like how important to you. That is actually really sweet gift, and it's really special to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, it's only been like when I got older and I sort of like wanted to experiment more with like sort of like, oh, bigger earrings and like, you know, something that's more of a like personality statement, that I actually started to take them off. But yeah, for like such a long time there was just this one thing I couldn't take off. But yeah, from like different pieces that I had on the photo I've sent you, there is also my parents' engagement ring. Actually, we're sort of it's a really interesting one because I got it from my mom. I don't even know when really. It sort of happened because like my parents were wearing their wedding ring, so my mom wasn't really wearing her engagement ring, so she sort of like gave it to me. But it was sort of it's one of my favorite rings, and one I wear quite often. But it's sort of like watching my parents' relationship change throughout the time, and sort of you know, like the symbol of that ring sort of constantly changing. That was it's a really important object to me, and like I feel quite really like attached to that one as well, in a way that sort of it just represents a lot of history for me, and sort of like how things can change, but at the same time there's like this sort of constant element to them as well. I don't know. It's sort of well, my parents have sort of like a very I don't know, like dynamic, difficult relationship maybe. Oh, that's the word I should use. So I think it was also like sort of trying to understand, like, you know, question what love means to me through that, and sort of like questions about commitment, and so I do feel like it's sort of a thing that represents a lot to me. And even now that my parents are getting divorced now, it's still sort of I still like keep the ring, and I still wear it, even though like it sort of represents in a way a relationship that has eventually like fallen apart and not really peacefully in a way, but it's still I don't know, it's just so it's stuff like a meaningful one.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I mean, like, I can definitely see through the timeline. I can't see through the timeline, but I can imagine the timeline through you tell me the story based on the objects start from like a earring that you always having it since when you were like little. I mean, actually like firstborn, because they bought it just for you. And then you got like your parents' engaged ring, which is, I think is a timeline that like you can feel, because like even though no matter how like they divorce now, or even like they've been separated, they still part from you, and they're still like your family, and the love is never gonna change from time to time anyway. And I think the personal thing is because if they don't engage, they will not marry, they will not having you. So it's still something that are really beautiful and meaningful. And again, I think a change, it can be like scary or sad, but also somehow that it's life. I think it's something that like you know, we just need to learn from it. And you know, in some way maybe like we need to be appreciate like from what we'd have, even though it's a sad, like, you know, in the park like it's sad, but also, you know, maybe it's just like in a different character or even like different role that like change and make maybe your parents or you like feel better in a way that like, you know, it's just like in a different character now, like in a different role.
I mean, I think it's sort of like also like even when like the sort of the change happens, that sort of is like this sort of falling apart in a way, it still like doesn't negate the past and sort of the beauty of the past that was before as well.
Yeah, agree.
That's sort of like what you said, that is just sort of like, there was love between them. And I mean, in a way, there still is, which I mean makes this whole situation even more complicated, like how they feel each other. But it's just sort of like, I don't know, it's just one of those objects that I do sort of look at, and like I do have a lot of like reflections surrounding like relationships, especially romantic ones, because they can just be so complicated and so like I don't know, hurtful, but at the same time so beautiful. And it's just something that like the contradictions that are within them.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, thank you so much for telling me. I mean, it's really personal firstly, and you know, I mean, maybe some of the audience that listen to this episode, you might feel like maybe some a part is related, that like change is such a big word, isn't it? It can be scary, it can be bad, it can be good. It's something that how you see the change and facing the change, I guess, because like somehow I think like through the timeline everyone changed a lot through, because based on the experience, based on like, you know, conversations, based on like the environment, based on like who you attach with, sometimes it can be like change. I mean, So yeah, I mean, thank you so much. Would you mind to tell me another timeline about your teddy bear?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I can try. That's gonna be a more difficult one, I think. A teddy bear. So I got him or her on my 20th birthday. From a friend I was sharing a house with at the time. But it was just after I was discharged from a hospital. And it was sort of, so first probably I should start that. Well, I was in a hospital for an eating disorder. So that was sort of, it's going to be difficult to talk about.
It's okay, take your time. I mean, if you want to hold my hand, you can.
It's all right, thank you.
No worries.
So I spent my 20th birthday in a hospital, and then I was discharged and sort of like came back to the house, to people I was sharing the house with, and she like got me the teddy bear as I got back as a birthday present. And basically, like when I was discharged from the hospital, I still like wasn't well, and it's sort of there is just so much that comes into like recovering from an eating disorder, and then sort of I was in a hospital for like the physical side of it, in a way that I had to go for like refeeding, but you are sort of like discharged when you reach a certain weight, and then you are sort of just let out, and there's no one really there to support you through like what comes next, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or at least that was the case for me. That I was sort of discharged, and then I had like some support from therapists, but it was also like around COVID times, so like there wasn't really any therapy in person, and it was just quite complicated in many ways. And I was sort of going through a lot of changes, like with like mentally and physically both, because it's sort of and was also feeling like, even though like going back to the house with my friends and like people I really love, and they were great and really supporting in all of this, I still was feeling quite lonely. It's sort of like a very, very lonely experience in many ways, and I feel like the teddy bear was something that like I got it as a gift on the day when I got back, and it was sort of with me throughout like the whole recovery, and sort of I don't know, just like sort of like putting the pieces back together, and like I was crying quite a lot, so I would like, I don't know, hug the bear and like cry into it, and it was sort of like my I don't know, like a really like supporting
like
object.
friend.
Yeah, it was almost like a friend. It was sometimes a punching bag, to be fair.
Yeah, that's also a good thing.
I mean, that bear has been like through a lot. He's been punched. He has like a lot of mascara stains on it as well right now. And so it's sort of now I think maybe that's why I'm sort of also like quite distant from it right now, because it sort of it does represent for me like some sort of healing, and I feel like it was like such a meaningful thing for me, but at the same time it does remind me of quite a difficult time as well. So I think that's why also like how I described the bear at the beginning as sort of like very bland, like I didn't create any personality, any name for him. I didn't. It was just sort of this thing that just was with me through like a very, very difficult time, and and at the same time, I think like there is the side to eating disorders that you sort of put yourself in a childlike state almost. I think I would probably have to go in more details there maybe, but I remember like it is sort of there is something really like that you almost put yourself in a childlike state when you are at this point in an eating disorder. So so I think just this sort of like clinging onto a bear as well was like a very natural thing to happen at the time in a way.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much. You're so brave, firstly. I mean, like, it's difficult to, sharing, like, such a personal story because for me, why I'm doing the Homecast is for me as well as how I want to express my feeling, also to, seeing actually who've been facing, like, difficulties or their experience through story too. And somehow, like, I can't say it's like find the similarity, but also it's like a way that to healing each other and sort of like reflect on each other timeline to see like who we are now basically, because somehow I'm facing difficulties too because I got such a lot of chronic pain through my uterus problem basically, and it affect me like walking sometimes, and I'm bleeding a lot. I can't stop bleeding basically, and through time to time I got depressions because like my hormone level been changing. I got depression for such a young age too, and it's difficult. I can definitely relate to how you feel because through me I got a teddy bear too, but that teddy bear was when I was 17 or 18 time, but I was like living in a boarding house that my house parent bought it for me for my Christmas gift, which is very sweet. It's quite a large size for me. It's not even like a half of a bear, it's not like half of a human size. I think it's like almost my height.
Oh wow.
I mean, I'm quite short, so like I'm 1.57 cm by the way, so if you guys can imagine like how big is the teddy bear, was like even taller than me a little bit. So
that's so pretty. That's very big. Okay.
yeah, it's like a big teddy bear. But during through the time I start to have depression again that I never told to people, like basically the time, and I just cry all the time, and I just hug the teddy bear because like I'm far away from my parents firstly, and secondly sometimes even like you're facing lots of lovely people around you when you. For example, like when you're having like depression or like eating disorder, you kind of like zone out. Like actually, you just want to in your bubbles. You just don't want to open up, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Like I find it is quite difficult, and like even though like there are like so many people who are opening up about their struggles as well, and I guess that it sort of like opens ways of like connecting, and like you can find people that understand you as well. But sort of when you're at this point being really deep in I don't know, eating disorder, depression, or whatever problem you are dealing with, really, it's just sometimes like you just want to be alone, and you sort of you don't want to see other people, and sometimes it feels like too much effort. Like I remember sort of like depression that comes with an eating disorder as well. Like sometimes I just don't have energy to really talk with anyone. And,
I get it.
And it's sort of like, and then in situations like that, a teddy bear is just can be such a great comfort, especially like the bigger ones that I like sort of like because they do sort of like replace human contact in a way without having to deal with actual person.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, like, I would like to ask you a question. You don't need to answer because it's quite personal, but like,
definitely.
Can you able to tell us like about about eating disorder. For example, like if someone beside, like maybe your friend or maybe someone that like are really important to you have eating disorder, what would be the best for like support or help? Because like I think it would be nice to be, people would notice some of the knowledge about it, and people, who listen that episode can, able to help someone or even like just give a little support for it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, like looking for support wise, I think like, especially with eating disorders, is sort of, I mean, first of all, like what helped me definitely is like therapy, and it's also like, I mean, it's like I was in a really privileged position to be able to like sort of access therapy. I know that some people can't from like financial reasons or whatever. Definitely like groups, like recovery groups on social media. There is quite a lot of like recovery related Instagrams that were really, really helpful to me. There are some like eating disorder recovery podcasts as well. And sort of like going into those groups that usually are quite like body positive, and I think like for me that was sort of really, really empowering to see people going through like similar thing. I mean, there is a lot of problematic things within the community as well, and you sort of have to be really careful. Like a really big thing is sort of people taking photos of before and after, which can be really, really upsetting. And for example, I know that for me, seeing photos of anyone showing like before and after and sort of the before that you get to see is sort of so upsetting that it doesn't support your own recovery in a way. So definitely this is something to be sort of mindful about if you're like venturing into recovery communities, that you have to be quite selective with them, and definitely like be really mindful of who you follow. Another thing, like I feel like it's very common for people to go into fitness communities, so it's sort of like like regaining power over your health, and that was sort of a thing that happened to me, which sort of ended up in another eating disorder spiral, because you sort of have you're still so focused on food and so focused on exercise, and sort of like it's still like the same perpetual cycle. It just presents itself in different ways, sort of more socially acceptable. So I think like, but that being said, within fitness community, Linda San, for example, it's a person I follow. Maybe for someone who is struggling with an eating disorder, would be an interesting person to look at. She sort of combined fitness and eating disorder recovery, which I think is sort of really important to find balance between the two. So that's a nice one to look at, I think.
Thank you so much for giving such a beautiful advice. And I mean, like, if there anyone like audience like listen that podcast, I will ask Sara about like the information, maybe like the Instagram account that you've been looked at before, and like some of the podcasts based on like eating disorder, like, how to heal and stuff, that like it might help for some people that would like to know. And I will send it into the YouTube link below. So because my Homecast is attached to YouTube platform and some website as well, so it would be nice like if I can share like those information to the audience as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm happy to share like a couple of them like with you. It's sort of like difficult to like think of any like on top of your head.
But, we can do
like,
it
yeah,
like
if
later
we can
on.
make a list, I guess that would be great. Yeah, because I think it's sort of like it's just sort of really important.
Yeah.
What you are surrounding yourself, especially when you are sort of like recovering.
I mean, I'm so much like appreciate like what you're just saying, and also being really thoughtful to think about some really useful language is really helpful and really kind for you to doing that. I mean, like certainly I think it's like through education maybe. I don't think people particularly will like say something about or education people about depression or like eating disorder or any like sort of mental health. They would just say precisely, oh, it's mental health, what you're going to do, and you just, see someone, but they're not really particular say how you deal with it, or I think like it's still not much support sometimes. So I think it would be really nice like to telling based on people personal experience, and I think will be the most easier way. And for me as well, like when I was in depressions, I did see counselor for a little bit, but after COVID I stopped because of pandemic, and through time to time like do be careful. I think somehow like if the people listen to the Homecast now, I think the most difficult is like to find the right person to talk to, or to having the treatment, because I think like sometimes different people when they're connecting or having conversations, or even not like even conversation, but it can be tough. And also again what Sara just been mentioned as well, like the before and after is the most difficult, because basically you open up to someone that you don't know as a stranger, and you're going to be like feel a bit lower mood basically, because you just open up to someone that it's not a problem, but it's something that you struggle at the moment through the timeline, for example. And I think it's a really good point that you mentioned to people about it, because just a little bit background about how mental health, or like for example eating disorder as well, because I think like some people might not too understand like sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's also sort of like on the topic of like the before and after photo that I mentioned as a problematic sort of things, that I think it's like very, like it perpetuates the sort of stigma that there is around eating disorders as well, which the first thing is that the worst is at the lowest weight, which is not true. I've had a eating disorder 4 years, probably like 8 years now maybe. And my worst wasn't at my lowest weight. Like how, like just the sort of the idea that eating disorder is somehow connected to your weight is really not true. And the sort of before and after photos suggest that if your weight is really low, that's your eating disorder being bad. Whereas when you're a healthy weight, then you're obviously healthy, which is not true, because eating disorder is a mental health condition, which sort of there's so much that goes into it. And of course there are different eating disorders as well. So and the sort of the before and after for one, of course, like sort of relates to anorexia, which again it's not the only eating disorder. It's not. It's very often like almost glorified as the sort of like a better eating disorder in a way, which is such a problematic way of thinking again, that this is sort of and I mean it's not only like on social media, or it's also within like health. Oh sorry, I'm sort of really struggling to find words for some reason.
Don't worry, take your time.
But yeah, even if you're sort of looking at medical professionals, they're also more likely to validate anorexia comparing to other eating disorders like bulimia, for example. It's just so much easier to access help for anorexia than it is to bulimia. And it's the thing is that once you develop one eating disorder, it's really easy to go into another one that's a bit different. That's how it was for me. I had bulimia for years, and then that sort of spiraled into anorexia. But when I had bulimia, there was not really much, no one would take me seriously in a way. I was I did get some help for anxiety and depression, but not really for my eating disorder because I wasn't losing weight. I wasn't visibly unhealthy, so it was fine. So that's sort of why I do find that sort of visual representations of eating disorder, sort of showing emancipated bodies. It's just not the thing that people should do, and it's just sort of Also, just the sort of the problematics of sort of connecting anorexia with white, abled bodies, usually women as well. It's sort of a very limited group of people that's usually represented on those sort of images. And again, it's just that it just creates so much stigma for other people. There are Black people who have eating disorders, there are men who have eating disorders. There's just, it's sort of,
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much because I learned something today too because I have friends who have similar situations, but I think there's not much information through internet. For example, it's rarely just only they got a specific type and they're not really telling really detailedly or something that I feel also social media sometimes it can be not really good. They can mess up the informations and just having judging eyes basically. So I mean really thank you so much for being real and just really raw and telling people. I mean I really appreciate it, and honestly that is so brave because those informations what you're just saying is so helpful and to make people understand some people they just need to be nice and just even don't say something that are harmful because it's affecting firstly and I think just being a little action just even give them a hug, it helps a little bit. And again what Sara just mentioned is really helpful for me and also maybe for some of the audience when someone having the similar situation as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Sara. It was such amazing things to talk to you. And I just want to go through with some questions.
Yeah, of course.
So what is the most important things you have learned in your life? What was your life like before you're learning it? What was your life like after you're learning it?
Oh, okay. So I think when I first read this question, so one thing I thought about is being learning that I can be two things at once. Meaning that sort of I always the one thing I always struggle with, I feel I like to be very specific personality wise. I'm quite analytical in the way I think and sort of process information, but at the same time I'm a very emotional person as well. So I always thought that I had to be either really analytical or either really emotional, that I just can't be. And by that I don't mean even being in between or being in sort of I don't mean a spectrum, that you can be somewhere in the middle, and like you can be a little bit analytical, let's say, and a little bit emotional. I mean, like being that you can be extremes, like you can be extremely emotional and extremely analytical at the same time. And this is something that like my therapist told me once, because I remember like talking to her. I also have like other mental health conditions, and like one of them, like I am diagnosed with borderline personality disorder as well. So so I had a tendency to see world in a really black and white, and I used to really almost like create an identity for me, like for myself. It was sort of like I went through a period of time when I just focused on being a nice person, and but it was almost like performed in a way, you know, like I really wanted to be nice to everyone, and I was just giving so much of myself just to sort of like satisfy an idea in my head that I created of myself. Then I had a period of time that I created sort of another identity for myself. And with that one, with like being sort of really analytical and really really emotional at the same time, because I am both. At the time, it was something I couldn't comprehend. I was sort of like, which am I? Like, am I really emotional or am I really analytical? Because I'm definitely not sort of. I didn't feel like I was in the space in between. I didn't feel like it was a spectrum. I sort of was like, okay, which one am I? But I'm also not really like honest. And then like once I was talking with my therapist, and she was like, but you can be extremely analytical and extremely emotional. And especially like I've already knew her for quite a while, for almost a year. And she was like, and you are like really extremely analytical and really, really emotional as well. And I was like, it never occurred to me that I could be two like opposing, almost like that my personality could embrace contradictions. And I think this is a sort of thing that you find out about yourself, that your personality can embrace contradictions, and you can be this person and this person at the same time. And it's sort of, and it's okay. And you don't have to sort of put a label on yourself that you have to be this sort of specific person. And sort of just, I don't know, it's just something that gives you so much freedom in like how you like interact with people, how you see your actions, how you like decide what you want to do. Because it's sort of like, when I had a phase when I believed I was really analytical, I was doing maths and chemistry, and I was sort of really into like sciences, and I was really focused on sort of embracing that part of myself, while completely neglecting the fact that I'm also like very intuitive and really emotional, and sort of now finding ways to like be both is, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that is actually a good, like, tips as well, like, just being you. I think because it's, like, I mean, not just you, but for me, for myself, like, I feel through time, like, even now, sometimes, like, you were still asking your question, like, who you actually are. And I guess it's because, like, sometimes people putting labels, like, accidentally putting a label, they didn't mean to do that, but they just, like, always saying some words, like, oh, I think you're like too like, you know, too kind, or maybe like saying like, oh, you bit look like a pleaser, sort of works. I mean, like somehow they didn't mean to say that, but somehow like it affecting someone that who actually want to figure out who they are and still not sure what they want to do, or even like a positions that like, you know, still like changing. I mean, like somehow in the past I will struggle. It's like I always, like you as well, like in the past, I push myself way too much to people. I'm like, I love helping people. It's like for me, it's like such a thing that I don't want to receive anything from people. I just want to help. But sometimes even I was still like, I'm not okay, but I still want to help people, and it can like affecting you a lot, or even like you feel like it's like so intense.
Yeah, you can like really push it to the point that it sort of becomes like just unhealthy for you, and sort of like there's a sort of boundary between being nice and like becoming a people pleaser that sort of that just drains your energy so much that you really don't have much left for yourself, or sort of you also just lose a side of yourself, of like who you are. And I mean, at that time, like it sort of happened to me that I was sort of like really, and it also wasn't very genuine in a way. I mean, for me, like at the time in like a sort of like specific period of time, I did have this sort of like very black and white sort of identity thinking and how I saw myself. So it's a sort of like I thought like, okay, I'm a nice person, so that was the only person I was. Like I wasn't. Yeah, it's very. The example of being nice, a nice person, is I feel like quite controversial, because there's nothing bad about it. It's just the way that I sort of I lived it. I just don't think that was sort of healthy, and I sort of pushed it too far. But at the same time,
Wow. I mean, I totally understand, and really, that is so personal. But like, I think it may be some as in like an experience as you and as myself too. I feel like really just being yourself. Sometimes like you will still like figure out like maybe if like some maybe younger audience like who listen it now, you might find it like, what are you talking about? I don't understand like that. It's okay. As we all been facing that when we were like teenagers. I think around teenagers time anyway.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, as long as when you like still being yourself, as in like believe yourself that who you are, and sometimes like it's okay to still like figure out like, oh, actually I want to be like more open up, like more bubbly person, or even like you want to just being a quiet person, or even you can be both, you know. I can be like that. I'm always like that. I'm can be quite talkative, but I can be like really silent person. Actually, like no one's know that I was in the place or like in the room. I can be like really way opposite, and because I'm really strong empathy person. Basically, like I actually can feel based on people saying something, and I can be like take quite a lot into based on people express their feeling, because somehow like I can feel it even though I didn't experience that, but like based on people describe it or saying something, I can like feel so much that like I will feel like, oh, I can relate it sometimes. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be a problem. It's not like a problem, but it's like something that affecting me a lot, because like I'm taking like other people energy. And, you know, sometimes I absorb quite a lot. Like, it can be nice energy, but also it can be, like, quite depressed energy. As in, like, I got depressions. Like, it's kind of even difficult. So I feel like a little tips for anyone who listen to this homecast. It's, like, really, it's okay to still figure yourself, and this is still you.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of like just also leaving room for like your own personality to like surprise you, because like sometimes you will act in a ways that you wouldn't really expect to act, like in a way that like you will make decisions that might not feel like you. But that's what you are drawn to at the specific time. And it's just so, like personality and like things we do is just like so fluid, and we change over time so much that it's just sort of putting labels on yourself that I am this kind of person, and that's, and sort of making sure that all of the things that you do sort of align with it. I think it's almost should be the other way around. Like do what you feel like doing and in the moment, and sort of like make your decisions and you don't have to worry too much about who you are and sort of defining your personality, and it's really interesting. Like I remember, like I went for especially like being a teenager and sort of growing up, you sort of try to define yourself and like sort of
who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And you're having like so much like this very introspective thinking and like analyzing yourself, but then it's sort of like in a way it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I think when I was a teenager through the time, like, I was still like, oh, you know, like when you're little, you sort of have like a group in school, or sort of like a friends of like bubbles, like who you want to friend with.
Like a little clique.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's sort of I think it's like how your personality will find like something similar people, like sort of similar energy anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, it's okay. I mean, like, just, you know, go for it, and, you know, somehow life change, and, you know, different perspective might change, and it's okay. So I feel like I think it's why people start to feel like having fear that like, oh, who I am, or like figure my identity in some way, or even like the character, for example. I think it's because based on like the society that like people need friends, or somehow like they just want someone to be having attention. No, maybe wrong. Like, don't take it too personal if like people hear it. It's just like something from my personal experience that like in the past, if I upset someone, I would feel so guilty. But like now, what I'm thinking now, I shouldn't be, because it's just we're in a different path basically, and it's okay. I mean, even though end up like, you know, maybe like we can't be friends, but it doesn't mean that like those memories will be taken out based on that. So I feel like if, you know, younger teenagers like listen to this Homecast again, do maybe think about it. It's a lot of like information, but it's like also just to slow down and actually listen to what you want, not what the society want, basically. And I think this is a really good lesson for not just for the audience, but for me or for you, because I feel like it's just sort of reminding as well, like, oh, actually, when I was a little, I was actually being a bit, you know, exhausted, and just being like, want to make people happy, but not make myself happy, and is exhausted and tiring, and that definitely, like, I wish someone would tell me beforehand, actually, when I was like younger, so I will be not in like a, you know, I mean, I'm not regret. I mean, if not those experiences, will not become who am I now, but it's sort of a things that I wish, like, if I can know a bit younger, then I can be not like in more struggle through my personality, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like it's sort of thing that if I knew back then, like it would change so much for me. But at the same time, like reflecting that, like now I can see like the patterns I had, and sort of like, oh, okay, that really makes sense now. And sort of like the thing that I sort of repeatedly did as well, like sort of like attaching myself so closely to like a personality descriptions, and like like almost wearing it as a mask and sort of performing it, and like trying to like define myself just to sort of make sense with like who am I as a person, and like what's my role in everything. Whereas it's just not that, it's not really needed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sara. Last but not least, want to ask you another question. What make you feel inspired or like your best of yourself?
So I think, well, I mean, I think as an art student, it wouldn't be surprised that I'm gonna say art, or mostly I think like engaging in art in like a gallery setting. I think there is something really special about going into a gallery space, which puts you in this like you're just I don't know, it's just sort of like you're standing there and you're like appreciating what's around you, and it's a very like specific state of like contemplation, and It's just I don't know. It's something very unique, and I mean, like, everyone who's been to the gallery space will probably know what I'm talking about, really. And especially if they sort of share the passion for art. It's just a sort of like being in a space where, yeah, where you can like sort of like take a step back from everything else and sort of focus on just like ideas. And also another thing is reading books. Like I read a lot, and I just love working with text in general, and like I do sort of pass it on to my practice as well. But yeah, I just sort of, I read a lot. I highlight the sentences I love, and I think that's sort of the analytical side of me that comes into it as well, that I just love like sitting and analyzing like very specific words, and this is the sort of thing that really makes me feel like very creative and sort of my best self in a way that I don't know, there's just something like really, really special in the sort of like engaging with text on like the and words, and but also like sort of being in a gallery setting.
I mean, like, I can like definitely relate it to how you feel as well, because the reason why I'm doing the Homecast is also, I don't know, it can be a piece of artwork, but also it's something that it's like a collection through timeline, journal, and like journey through like the people I just know, a stranger I just talked to, or what I've been received through conversations. And I feel like through what I've been inspired at the moment is definitely through conversations. For you, like, it would be like a text. It's like a type of different language, you know? It's so interesting how language just guide us to in a different platform, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And just sort of like the way language functions, and it's sort of like, it's a completely different experience to like experience language or text in a sort of like a written form, whereas like comparing to sort of like a conversation.
Yeah.
It is a very, very different experience. I would say that like text is way more curated, which that's something that I love about text personally, or like written word, about sort of finding meaning behind like every single word. And especially like even if I'm writing, my boyfriend always gets surprised because like it takes me ages to write one paragraph. Like, I'm the slowest writer ever. But it's just because, like, for example, I can spend an hour looking for a perfect word I want to put in a sentence. And I'm really, really selective with words. And but this is something I love as well, about like just sort of going into just a sort of hole that I just like look at synonyms of words, and just like sort of I'm in this hunt for a perfect word that's gonna go into a sentence. And like also I encounter new words that I haven't heard before, knew before, because English is not my first language, so it's sort of I mean, I could talk about it for a really long time, probably. But yeah, I do love sort of text and like curating words. But yeah, I mean, but then there's something just so beautiful about like conversations that you encounter between people and what they bring to a table, and just it's really amazing.
I mean, that's just really wonderful, firstly. I mean, like, to be honest, I feel like as an artist, I mean, I can definitely feel like so related, because even though I feel lots of people always think that, oh, as you study fine art, you might just do particular just, you know, most people I know, like, that are not study art or don't have like any knowledge from it, they always think that, oh, you study fine art, you doing painting, but that is not true.
Oh yeah, people do tend to assume that, don't they? And I'm like, I really don't paint.
Well, you know, everyone have their different like string basically, like learning and express their art way in different way. I would just say because I'm like a mixed media. Also, I'm jumping around like a lot with different types of art, really. Also experimenting, but also feel like another little saying maybe. It's just like art is actually, it can be anything.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You don't need to be knowing drawing, or you don't need to know actually writing. You can be anything that actually mean to you is artwork. And really personally thinking as well, like I feel so much appreciated. Like I got this platform, for example, Homecast, or being created to something that I like to express, that to guide for me my mental health issue, or also to heal myself through the journey. And I think that is really important. It's like same as like anyone. Like I mean, like some people as an audience, maybe you guys are not an artist, but you might find yourself like you interest with something else, and that will be guide for you to like a healing process, or just to help you. I think like because just try to sum up like a little bit like through what we've been talking for this Homecast is like timeline, through love, through, you know, up and down, through like difficulties, and try to get healed, and you know, try to experiment, develop, and trying. I think those, it's actually such a big things, but also is a reflection on who you are to become like who you are now, I guess. As in like it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of like embracing who you are at the moment, and sort of being open for whoever you're gonna be in the future and whoever you were in the past. It's sort of like you're just gonna change every day, and sometimes like you won't be consistent. Like people are not consistent in how they are, how they show up in the world. It's sort of like like people do things out of character, but it's just gonna happen, and it's sort of there is no way to like.
I think just accepting is like the work that's thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's okay. I think it's like it's okay to be exploring. Even now, I'm still exploring.
And like being like unpredictable in a way, and like unpredictable with yourself and for yourself as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So thank you so much for being my guest, Sarah. That is such a lovely talk with you.
Thank you so much, Amelia, for having me as well.
I'm really like grateful for you know, having a talk with you. I mean, I learned a lot, and definitely there's so much thing like in my mind at the moment, like, oh my god, there's like a lot of things going on, but it's like a good busy like processing, you know, like a hard day is actually try to save all the memory through like, you know, and so if anyone who interested with like some link, I will put it in the YouTube down below, and if anyone would like to talk to Sarah, I will put like Instagram account on like Sarah, and then like you can text Sarah on Instagram or anything.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. So bye for now. See you guys very soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.